Dynamic effort training doesn't work because you're doing it wrong. So just like we did with the max effort method, let's jump into why the dynamic effort method is not working for you. So before we begin, let's jump into what the purpose of the dynamic effort method is. So for those who don't know, the dynamic method effort is all about speed, power, force, and increasing your ability to create a maximal force through very highly technical reps. So what does it do? Just like we do with our max effort method, anytime you're putting force through a muscle, you're increasing intramuscular and intermuscular coordination. Big fancy words meaning our muscles contract more efficiently and our muscles actually work better together to create a faster signal and a more efficient signal for your nervous system to fire. Very, very important. Dynamic effort method also gives you adequate practice. The skill of powerlifting or the skill of barbell lifting is based primarily around technique. Yes, you can lift things with brute force without technique, but if you maximize your technique and get stronger and more explosive and powerful, you will be more efficient with that barbell, therefore being able to move more weight more efficiently. Focus under fatigue. Now, this can vary from person to person. If you lack a certain amount of GPP or a certain amount of general physical preparedness or conditioning, dynamic effort work can help you start to build that and force you to start focusing on things like technique in a fatigued state. Very, very important, because if you compete in strongman and powerlifting or whatever it is you're competing in, when you start to get tired, your body starts to kind of go a little bit crazy. Dynamic effort method is a great way to start implementing some of that fatigue into your training and forcing yourself to commit to solid, perfect reps even when you're tired. Finally, rate of force development. You see a lot with dynamic effort that use bands or chains or whatever, but the fact of the matter is we're trying to increase that inter and intramuscular coordination so that the rate of force development can be high enough and we can make sure that we are putting ourselves in a position where we are producing the highest amount of force that we possibly can. All right, so now that we kind of went over the purpose of the dynamic effort method, a couple things you need to go over. The dynamic effort method has nothing to do with bands and chains. Bands and chains are just a tool that you can use in your dynamic effort work to kind of change the stimulus a little bit. You can do all of this dynamic effort work without any sort of crazy bars, bands, or chains. In fact, I'm going to say something fairly sacrilegious here in the land of conjugate. You can actually do dynamic effort with jumps and throws, right? Power production. All we're trying to do is build up your ability to produce force and to exert power. We can do that with jumping, with box jumps, with bounds, with leaps, with single leg, double leg, whatever it may be. You can also do it with throws, med ball throws, reactive medicine ball throws. These are all that's not the right word. These are all under the banner of dynamic effort work because you're trying to produce that force and increase your rate of force development. So like I had mentioned before, the prerequisites for dynamic effort work, if you're going to do the more traditional route with barbells for your bench, your squat, and your deadlift, you need to have the prerequisite skill and technique in order to do the movements correctly. We're talking about a fairly high volume when it comes to dynamic effort work, 10 sets of 2, 12 sets of 3, whatever it may be. Is the fact of the matter is if you're doing a different technique every single time you perform the lift, you're not getting much out of it. You need to make sure that you are performing this movement the same every single time, and that's where this practice comes into play. If you find your technique slipping, or if you are changing things, you're using too much weight, not enough weight, right? That all matters. And that leads me into my second point for a prerequisite is the load, right? It needs to have adequate loading. You need enough weight on the bar so you can produce enough force without having too little weight on the bar where it's just too easy, right? Having 10% of your max weight on a bar for sets of 2, right, isn't gonna do much. So making sure there's enough weight on the bar, and that can range, right? That can be 30% to 75% for some people. It depends on if you have bands or chains or whatever method that you wanted to use. But the focus should be on producing high amounts of force with the similar technique that you're using for that competition or for the lift that you're doing. Next up, this also requires you to have some sort of real strength builder. Doing the dynamic effort alone will not give you that top-end absolute strength that you need to really put more weight on the bar. You can get better and better with technique alone, and you can go for a very long time if this was your only mainstay when it comes to training. But the fact of the matter is, without some sort of max effort method, or at least some strength builder, heavy singles, doubles, triples, sets of 5, right? You're not going to be getting that higher level strength input into your training. And just like we had talked about with the max effort training, you need to make sure you have your secondary movements in there as well. You can't just hit 10 or 12 sets of 2 on deadlifts and then leave the gym, right? We need to have those builders. We still need to put muscle on. We still need to work on those skills, and we still need to bring up any sort of weaknesses we have in technique. Same thing when it comes to, well, we don't need to do this one because I forgot to erase that one, is hypertrophy and that GPP work. If you do not have the necessary conditioning or work capacity, dynamic effort work, if done correctly, is going to kick the shit out of you. You're going to be leaning up on a rack, you're going to be leaning against like a deadlift platform, trying to catch your breath while your partner is waiting for you to stop being so fat. So making sure you have the adequate amount of GPP in your programming, or at least in the off season, so you can survive and you can handle that higher level of force production as well as that shorter rest periods. Super important, right? So guys, I think that's pretty much it. The reason dynamic effort work is not working for you is because you're not focusing on what's important: technique and rate of force development. You don't want to put yourself in a position where you're putting too much force into the bar and your technique changes entirely. Technique is the brackets at which you produce that force. If you're finding that you're kicking yourself out of your technique because you're trying to produce too much force, put some more weight on the bar, slow things down to make sure you are within your ability to technically have technically sound reps. Whew. There we go. That's all I got. So guys, thank you very much for checking out this video. If you like this, if you like all the other ones, let us know down below. We will continue putting out this content for you. So thank you very much for watching this on behalf of myself and these 2 cameras that are capturing every movement of my body. I hope you enjoyed this, and we will see you in the next one.